Hi guys, my name is Trinity, and if you are here, you must be here to talk about books because that's why I'm here. And today we will be doing my September wrap-up. As you guys know, I participated in Book Oplathon, and let me tell you, it didn't go well. It didn't go well at all. And I want to start off this video by saying the first book that I read this month was a out of the park, home run, 5-star read. And it put me in such a reading slump because nothing else could compare to it. And I ended up just having probably the worst reading month of the year because of the reading slump that this put me into. And I mean, I love it. It's amazing. It's brilliant. But that book is the reason that I only completed 8 books this month. 8. That is so low for me, which I get that 8 books in a month is actually pretty good. But when you have a set goal of 10 and usually exceed it, not so good. So I read 1 thriller and 1 historical fiction. The rest were fantasy, so that would be 6. Even the ones I DNF'd were fantasy, and I DNF'd 3 books this month, and I'll talk about all of them. So let's go ahead and talk about the books that I DNF'd this month, because I usually work my way from the ones I like the least to the ones I liked the most. And one of these, I do want to say that I didn't think it was a bad book. It was just I was not jiving with the writing style. So that is something that I have a tendency to do with books that I'm just not getting along with. I DNF them just to save myself and the author from a bad review, because it's not the writer's fault, it's me. Like, I'm not getting along with the book. So that was one of the reasons that I DNF'd this month. But let's go ahead and talk about them. So the first book that I DNF'd would be Woodcastle by Kell Inkston. Now, the author did send this to me for a review. However, I want to say I got about halfway through it and I was just not vibing with the writing style of the book. This is dialogue heavy, and I'm not big on description to begin with, but it was so dialogue heavy that I kept getting lost in the dialogue. I wasn't exactly sure what was going on. We were doing a lot of talking and not a whole lot of like action or anything like that. So there wasn't a whole lot of story to glom onto. I'm a plot-driven reader. And so I was having a whole lot of issues getting into the plot of this because it's so dialogue heavy. However, it was well-written dialogue, so there was not an issue there. I just couldn't get into it, and I found myself just drifting off as I was reading. So I will have to say that this is a DNF for me. The next book that I DNF'd would be Black, Leopard, Red Wolf by Marlon James. Ugh, okay, so I picked this one because for the Book Oplathon, I had to pick a book that dealt with current events, and this one deals heavily with racism. However, oh my goodness, okay, this book was chaos. Just sheer and utter chaos. And I do not like books that are written purely for shock value. I don't enjoy those types of books. And I felt like a lot of this story was shock value. How much can I put in here that's going to be disturbing? How much can I put in here that's supposed to be erotic but is not? And how much racism can I throw in your face? So there was a lot of things about this book that I just did not jive with. And the writing style is reminiscent of Kristoff. So it's pretty haphazard and chaotic. But I couldn't even get into the story because of all of the shock value that was there. Just, it didn't work for me at all. And the next one that I DNF'd would be the Left-Handed Booksellers of London. Let me tell you, not only am I not having a great time with the Bookoplathon, I am not having a great time with my Pop Sugar Challenge this year. Just not. And I'm to the point where I'm about to just be like, you know what? Let's ignore the Pop Sugar. Let's ignore readathons and just read books that I want to read. Because I have been sitting down this month going, I'm not enjoying half the stuff I'm reading. So, no. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. But the Left-Handed Booksellers of London, I had heard that it was very quirky and everything like that. And I've never read a Garth Nix book before, so I didn't know what I was getting into. But I didn't like this book. Again, it's very, very haphazard. Couldn't figure out what was going on half the time. And it just wasn't for me. Was not for me. And I'm sad about that because there are a couple of other Garth Nix works that I'm really, really wanting to read, but I hope that they are not like the Left-Handed Booksellers of London. And if you're wondering why I don't have the other two books, I have already taken them back to the buy-sell trade. So they are no longer here. Next we have At the Water's Edge by Sara Gruen. I gave this book 3 stars. So I had read Water for Elephants a few years ago, so I knew I already liked Sara Gruen's writing, and that is not a problem in this book. However, there are some very questionable things going on in this book, and when I say questionable, I mean like, why the heck would the people even do that? So in the middle of World War II, this guy decides he's going to sail across the ocean to find out if the Loch Ness Monster exists. And he's going to take his fiance with him. Wife? Fiance? I think it's fiance. I've already forgot. And they're just going to run off together. Fiance, yes, because now I'm remembering part of it. To Scotland and find Nessie. Like, that's what we're going to go do. And there's a lot of abuse and alcoholism and drug addiction and craziness that goes on in this book that it's not cohesive at all. And I was really hoping for that Water for Elephants, like where we delve into the characters and, you know, get to know their pasts and why they ended up in this place that they're in, and we get to move through life with them. But this just didn't have that same feel. It was, like I said, haphazard, and none of the events made sense. And, you know, the ending was okay. It was okay. But it was also one of those endings that you're like, I saw this coming a mile away, and nothing was surprising about it, or I don't know. Like, the writing is still good, but I just was not impressed with this. I am holding on to it for now because I do own the signed copy, but it might end up at the buy-sell trade. Next, we have the book that I gave a 3.52, and that would be She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Chan. And I did a full review of this book, so I will link that down below so you guys can check that out. And coming in at a 4-star, we have The Sanatorium by Sara Pearse. Now this is kind of a 3.5, but on the higher end, just above She Who Became the Sun. But I enjoyed this, and I really think that I'm going to enjoy this as a series. The main character of this book is a detective, or was a detective. They are on leave for mental instability, and they go to this sanatorium. It's a hotel, and they get there and things start going a little wrong. But she's going to meet her brother and her brother's fiance, and the fiance goes missing. And so she starts to get into detective mode and looking for the fiance. And again, things go a little awry, and I don't want to give away too much because it's a thriller. But I have to say, I loved the way some of these elements played out, because even when it goes in a direction where you're like, saw that coming, it might not play out exactly how you were thinking in your head, because there were a lot of times where I was like, this is what's going on and I can see it, but then there's another twist added to that twist. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. Now, I gave it a 3.5 because the character work was a little, but the main character in the book is really good. It's just the side characters in the book that aren't quite fleshed out. And the focus is on the main character in this book. So it's not horrible, but it's not great that the side characters aren't quite as fleshed out. There is a lot of men treating the mentally unstable women as helpless. That does happen in this book. And she is mentally unstable for a reason. It's something that happened while she was on a case that played into some past trauma for her, and it just kind of set her off on the deep end, and she took a medical leave from work. So now also when I was talking about this, I said that it was a gothic thriller. I didn't get too many gothic elements from this. The setting was pretty gothic, but it didn't have that slow build that you expect from a gothic. And there were a couple more elements missing from it that would make me deem this gothic, but I did really enjoy it. So I think with it having that gothic thriller tagline and expecting a little bit more from the characters, those were the only things that made me give this a 3.5 instead of a 4-star. All right, moving into my 4-star reads. I read The Tethered Mage by Melissa Caruso. Let me say, I have read The Obsidian Tower, and I did not realize that it was a spinoff of this trilogy. So I already knew that I liked this world because The Obsidian Tower is part of this world. And this book focuses on a princess who actually can hold her own, and she is dealing with the political machinations going on in the world. But something happens, and I'm going to go ahead and tell you what happens because it's the very beginning of the book, and it's why it's called The Tethered Mage. So when she is out doing things she's probably not supposed to be doing, her mom always has an eye on her, so it's not necessarily that she is in danger. She encounters a mage who is about to go volatile. Now, in this world, there is something that they can bind the mages with called a jess. And when you bind a mage with a jess, you become the owner of that mage, or you are the one who can control their powers. And when she encounters this mage that's about to go volatile, there is a soldier who says, hey, throw this jess on them and, we'll all be safe. And so she's like, okay, cool. Throws the jess on him. And the soldier didn't realize who she was, that she was the princess. And she is not supposed to have one of these mages at her beck and call. And now not only does she have a mage, she has one of the most powerful mages anybody knows of. And so things go from there, but in the midst of all of this, she is trying to prevent a war from happening. And this sets people off in a horrible way for her country, because now not only has she stepped into the role of ambassador, she also now has power that she's not supposed to have. So this is making all of the political machinations, all of the political intrigue, like the ante keeps getting higher and higher, because she keeps unknowingly doing things that are making the situation worse. And it's such a good read. I gave this 4 stars. I loved it. I loved it as much as I loved the Obsidian Tower. And I cannot wait to continue with this series. I don't know that this is going to make like my top 10 favorites, but I have a feeling that I'm really, really gonna like these, because like I said, I've read the spinoff to the series already and thoroughly enjoyed it. Next, we have the final book in the Queens of Renthia trilogy, and I enjoyed this. I really did. I think I gave it a bad rap whenever I was talking about it in the Should You Read the Queens of Renthia. So this was a good book. However, this is a little bit of a disappointment coming off of the second book in this trilogy, because the second book in this trilogy is a knock it out of the park 5-star. And this one just wasn't. Some things were rushed. Some things were prolonged that didn't need to be. I feel like this could have easily been a duology and it would have been great. Because some of the things, like I said, I don't feel were necessary in this book, but we do get a satisfying ending to the main plot of the Queens of Renthia trilogy. And I don't know that I love the way it ended, but it is a satisfying conclusion for the main plot. I can't talk too much about it without, giving spoilers, but let's just say that there were some decisions made that I didn't quite agree with. There were routes that some of the characters took that I was like, well, why did we do that? But I still gave this book 4 stars. I still think that The Queens of Renthia is a series that everyone should read. And I liked it. Like I said, I gave it 4 stars. It just wasn't the 5-star that the second book was. So go in knowing that this one is not as good as the second book. All right, guys, I have a new auto by author. I'm just going to say it. So the next 3 books on the list are 5 stars. I did say that I had a crappy reading month, but I had some very high highs and some very low lows this month. As you've seen, I DNF'd 3, and 3 I gave 5 stars. However, one of them is a reread, so it doesn't really count. But I did end up having some really great reads come out of this month, and like I said, I have a new auto by author. I read Small Favors by Erin A. Craig. I will be doing a full review of this book, and I have to say, if you're looking for a creepy atmospheric read, pick up Erin A. Craig. Either House of Salt and Sorrows or this book, either one will do you. And I love it. I love this book so much. I am a huge fan of Erin A. Craig's writing style, and she is one of those modern authors who can do Gothic very, very well. Very well. Very atmospheric, very creepy. Our characters are well thought out and nuanced, and I really enjoyed that. What did throw me about this book was there is a character named Trinity, and every time I read it, I was like, what? Huh? But that's about it. But yeah, it says unique, enchanting, and haunting. The little tagline up here, and I totally agree. Totally agree. I've never read anything like this. We are dealing with a family of beekeepers, and we are approaching winter. And as everybody knows, bees have a hard time surviving the winter if they're not taken care of, as far as hives go. And we find out a lot of things are about to go wrong for the family in this book. And we encounter some fae type creatures who are lurking in the woods outside this town. Everything does get fully explained by the end, but this is one that leaves you on the edge of your seat because you have no idea what the horror is. You have no idea what's going on because the people of the town have no idea what's going on. And so it is a very slow unraveling of the horror that they're facing. And I loved it so much. Like I said, I will be doing a full review of this book later on. All right, now I'm putting this book here, not as the top one, because this is a reread, even though it's 5 stars and it's my favorite book. But I did end up rereading Bloodsong by Anthony Ryan. You guys were supposed to get a vlog. I got sick. Sorry about that. But returning to this book was everything I wanted it to be. I still love Anthony Ryan's writing, and so let's talk about what happened and why I reread this. I had DNF'd 3 books because of the next book I'm going to talk about, because they just couldn't stack up. Like, I even just picking up a book, there was a couple books that I actually picked up and put back down because I was just not into it. I was not in the mood. And they're books that I know I will like, so I'm not DNFing them. And I mean, there was 3 that I permanently DNF'd, but there's a couple more that I set aside and was like, okay, I gotta wait. But all of my friends were like, okay, you are in a huge slump and you need to find some way to get out of your reading slump. And my friend Andrew, he was like, why don't you just reread Bloodsong? You made me read it. now you go read it again. Because there were little details that I forgot. And when he was wanting to talk to me about it, I was like, but he wanted to talk about the little details. And so I hadn't realized it had been 7 years since I read this book. And so I was like, okay, sure, let's reread Bloodsong. And there were things that I forgot. There were little things that whenever I went back to read, I was like, oh, I had forgot about that. Oh, I forgot about that. That's how they met. Oh my gosh, that I remember that now, but didn't remember it whenever I was talking to Andrew about it. And so I really, really enjoyed rereading my favorite book of all time. It was so good. It's still 5 stars for me. It's still my favorite book. And I would recommend everybody pick up Bloodsong. If I don't recommend it in every video, am I me? All right. Now, I could blame Abby for this because in the book Oplathon, I had to pick a book off of someone else's TBR. So Abby decided to pick The Blackest Heart by Brian Lee Durfee. Guys, this book was so good that it didn't matter what I read after it. It did not stack up. There was not, like, I tried to read a book from one of my favorite series and ended up having to set it aside because I was like, I can't do this right now because this book put me in such a reading slump that I just couldn't handle anything else. It's so good. So good. So the premise of these books is based on a prophecy about 5 warrior angels. And when these 5 warrior angels come together, we're going to be facing the end of the world. That's pretty much what the prophecy says. And these 2 warring factions are going to go to war. And we are seeing the 2 factions trying to push toward that goal instead of trying to prevent it. And so it's one of those things where the tension is always there. Always there. It never really lets up. Even in the slower moments, you know that tension is there because you know what we're working towards. And I've said before, I'm not a character-driven reader. These are one of the only series that I have found this chunky that is plot-driven. And while the characters are great, this story is just, oh, it gets to me. It gets to me so much. And I love the characters. I love the world. We have quite a bit of world building. We have the time. We have the space. It's done. Character development, it's done. Plot is so good. And we have political machinations and deception and just, all the things I love about books. It's in here. It's in here. And so, like I said, I had to pick up Bloodsong to get past this book. I had to go reread my favorite book so that I could be like, okay, we can move on. But this book is so good. And I don't want to say too much about it because this is the 2nd book in the 5 Warrior Angels series. But other than what I've already said, what more do you need to know other than read it? Read it! I need you to read it! And then talk to me about it because I absolutely love these books so much. I cannot wait for the 3rd one to come out. I'm so excited. And yeah, this is the book that killed my reading for the entire month of September. I did end up finding another 5-star after this, but this was at the beginning of the month and the other book was at the very end of the month. And so, like I said, it took me a long time to get over this one. And I'm hoping that we can push forward in October because I'm still a little slumpy. Still a little slumpy. All right, that is it for my video today. Like, subscribe, do all the fun things, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!